Valiantys. Lead the way.
Everyone, my name is Reto Gehring, Head of Professional Services, Switzerland. So, and I was named as a participant of this panel, but actually I'm not. Well, somehow I try to make here like a conversation going, obviously around José, he's just the side of me, who will talk about Honeywell. And I will try to ask some smart questions to the other participant, like Michele from SAFE, Shane from Atlassian, and Sani from our Agile at Scale practice. But if you have smarter questions, there's a big chance. So just come to me, I will come to you, and then you can ask those guys directly what you need to know. So before we actually start, let's start with a small introduction. So I assume everybody checked your LinkedIn profile or something like that. So, José, tell us something that is not on your LinkedIn profile.
Something that's not on my LinkedIn profile. Actually, it's been a while I haven't seen that. I live in Gland, which is a very interesting town, just close to Holl, which is like 7,000 people. And I actually come from Brazil, and my hometown there is 90,000 people. So you can see the cultural shock, right? One of the things that's not on my LinkedIn is in Gland, they have people who actually have, orchards and apple trees and things like that. And they put a little basket there, and you can go grab the apples, and you pay, and you leave. In Brazil, that is inconceivable. I mean, why don't you just get all the apples? Why do you need to pay? It's free, right?
Okay, thank you very much. So, Michele, Scaled Agile. I know you're so dedicated to trains. So you even came by train, right? You came by train together with Shane from Cologne. So what we doesn't know from your LinkedIn profile?
So maybe that I'm Italian, so the name is Italian, Michele, but the surname is Lanzinger, so not really Italian, but nobody's perfect. So I also have a kind of a cultural shock because I'm living in Germany, and so for Italian people living in Germany, coffee, food, weather. So I could stay here the whole day for making up. We don't talk about football, please, today. Why do you laugh? Don't laugh, please. It's not good. So I will start crying now.
Okay, Shane, you want to take over?
Hi, everyone. Shane McGuire from Atlassian. What's not on my LinkedIn? I'll go with the name thing. So my name is Shane. I was recently in Israel, and they pronounce it Shani, which is actually a female name. So they greet me sometimes with surprise because I'm not actually female, as you can see. Germans sometimes struggle with my name as well. So there's a little bit of a cultural stream going on here. Sometimes they just see Sana, and my name is Shane. I live in England. I'm Irish Australian, first time in Bern. Really happy to be here.
Actually, I'm born in Mauritius. Why you said why coming from this beautiful country and coming in Europe? Mm-hmm. I don't know. It happened like this. My name come from actually Sundaresan, and people call me Sunny, right? Sundaresan actually means the glowing halo of the sun, right? So Sunny, Sundaresan is the same for me. Okay. Otherwise, I love Switzerland because I'm a trader. So as a trader, I love mountains. So that's what I don't put this kind of thing on my LinkedIn.
Okay, thank you very much. So when we started, you see those guys, they're really agile, because when they started, they said we prefer to stand up, and now they're sitting. So I don't know what's going on.
Guess who's standing? The Agile coach.
Yes, see, the coach is standing. So And that leads me actually to Jose. So tell us a little bit what you did at Honeywell, the history. I think people who attended the last VED, they know you very well.
Probably.
Because you talked quite a lot about EasyBI.
I always talk a lot, doesn't matter what.
Yeah, that was the other warning. I'm supposed to be here as a timekeeper. And Jose said, I'm not going to stop. And Michele said, I'm not going to stop. Shane, as I know him, he's not going to stop. Sunny is maybe the one that I can manage most. So if they talk too much, tell me, and then I really try to stop them. Okay.
Okay, so in Honeywell we started Agile in the pre-COVID era because that's how we tell time today, right? BC is before COVID, and and AC is after COVID, right? So before COVID we started about 2018. We had a big problem because we have at that time we had like 150 products in more than 20 countries, and as you can notice, everyone's doing duplicate work. And just for fire sensors, the things you put in the kitchen that tells you that there's a fire going on, we think we had like 25 different models totally independent from each other. So our CTO said, first thing, we need platforming. Second thing, we need to group these folks and make sure we do the right thing only once. Stop putting teams competing to each other. That's 70s management. Don't do that in your company, by the way. And then, based on our complexity and what we have already been doing, we get to know SAFe. And I said, yeah, it looks like it's a good fit. And we had a process at that time that had about 140 work products, like plans and checklists and things like that. And then we just deleted the website, pointed to the SAFe website and said, guys, this is the process. I know SAFe, that's not how it should be deployed. I'm here to tell how I did, right? The good, the bad, and the ugly, right? So do you want to say something about that?
What should I say?
Can you take the microphone?
I mean, the point is, we wanted from the very beginning to bring all the knowledge we are actually not inventing by our own, but is the feedback out of all the implementation that has been made out there. So we have more than 20,000 companies trying to implementing SAFe. Some of them are succeeding, some others are not succeeding. What I'm always saying is don't shoot the medicine, right? Because when you have problems, and as you had at Honeywell, so what you want to do is to solve the problems you have. So come back or come down from 140 products down to, I don't know, 10, 20, 30, whatever it makes sense in your business, right? But there are unfortunately too many companies that are just focusing on, oh, we just want to implement SAFe. And you ask them, why? And they look at you as you were asking something very strange. And so I'm using always these parallels. So you as a company, you have an issue, you have a, let's say, a problem, and the tools like Atlassian tools and processes or framework like SAFe are possibly the medicines you need. But you also need doctors, you also need the experts that know how to apply the medicine, because the medicine by itself, it won't help you. I tell the people when I'm training, and also in senior leadership meeting as well. So is SAFe, the big picture, shit in, shit out. So we're not making your business working by magic, right? So you will need the people, you will need the processes, you will need the tools, especially if you are a big company. The tools are embedded in the way you are doing business.
And the budget.
Sorry?
And the budget. These things are all expensive. Don't think it's cheap to, train 5,000 people in SAFe or to deploy a release train, but it's worth it. Okay, so how did we do that you're saying, right? So we now, today we have about 10 SPCs who belong to my team, and they're full-time Agile coaches. And you say...
Sorry, what are SPCs?
SPCs are SAFe program consultants.
Yes.
So the experts
They're
in SAFe. And I'm saying the expert, they should be expert because they have implemented these many times, and not just because they were in an implementing stage.
Or passed the certification,
Or
right?
pass the certificate. Because certification is important, but is not the end, is the beginning.
So then it took some time for us. Today we have like 25 trains. Every train has about 10 to 12 Scrum teams. And so then we reached the first big block, which is my CTO came to me and said, how do I know how the trains are doing? I don't want to go into Jira. Then what did I do? I called Reto and said, Reto, grüezi, hilfe mir. So Reto came and said, hey, Jose, there's this thing called EasyBI, and that was my presentation last year. So we did a whole lot of things inside of EasyBI and Jira to standardize the name of the sprints and make sure that we could group by team, by release, by program increment, by release train, by unity of business. And then the CTO was happy. We called that visual management. We started with very silly metrics like say do. Is the team, the Scrum team, delivering what they promised they would deliver? I say silly because that's not truly an agile metric. But my message here is you don't need to be, and you should not be 100% agile to start agile. Otherwise, you had already started some time ago, right? So don't look for perfectionism there. And then after that, we started looking into trains that now need to talk to trains and depend on each other. Right, out of these 25 trains. So for instance, if I have fire sensors here, it needs to talk to the panel, and it needs to talk to the mobile app, because everyone now wants to use mobile app for everything, right? So there you go. We need to have all these things connected. But to do that, we need to go to the safe solution layer, which was completely a mystery at that point in time. It was in 2020, probably not for you. But for me, they were talking about capabilities and all this esoteric stuff like portfolio management, and no one quite understood that. So what did we do? We hired one of your partners, Flowsphere, here in Switzerland. They had already deployed solution layer and say, hey, this is my understanding of solution layer. That's what we want to do. Do you think it's a good idea, the way we're doing? Or are we completely off, and I am the crazy agile fundamentalist here? And said, no, it's kind of reasonably the same. You could improve here or there, and that's how actually SAFe and their partners help us in this. But then we got stuck in another point. One release train for us had 45 Jira projects, because they were doing it per release, you know what I mean, per product type. How do you get one dependency from one train to be readable by the other train in Jira? So that would have meant I would have to give to everyone in Jira access to every single project in my company, which I cannot because of product security reasons. And also, how do I do, for instance, the capability thing? Do I put it in a separate Jira project here, and then everyone looks at that project, which again will be seen by everyone, so my strategy is available to the developer. I mean, the 5,000 developers, that's not good either. So what we decided to do is say, okay, let's stop and see what we have in the market that will solve us with this problem. And that's when, after looking into lots of other tools that I'm not allowed to say the name here because they're not part of the event.
You are.
Oh, yeah? Okay.
Yeah, sure.
We found Jira Line, right? And that's, I think, your hint, Shane. What is actually Jira Line? Why do you think it helped us?
Well, so thank you, Jose. So Jira Line is Atlassian's enterprise agile at scale offering. So Jira Align was formerly known as Agile Craft, and Atlassian bought the company, bought the product about 4 years ago now, and yeah, it's now called Jira Align. And yeah, it works extremely well with Jira. It creates a layer on top of Jira, and the teams that are working in Jira can continue to work in the way they work, and the information, the status of their work will flow up into the rest of the organization. You know, so for product management, for portfolio management, for the executives to be able to see just how work is getting on. You know, are we on track to deliver what we need to be delivering for the rest of the business? And you know, the information is the information flow is two-way. You know, it's from the strategy layer down through the programs, through the product area, through the solution area, and into the teams that are actually delivering the work. So the context is never lost. We actually have a button called the Why button, and you can go into Jira Align, you can see why we're actually building this piece of work. And that Why button, that information actually flows down into Jira as well, which is a really nice feature to have. So the days of having delivery teams working on strategies that are old, 3 months old, we've pivoted away from that, from a particular strategy because of COVID perhaps, or something else. The days of those teams being disconnected from the business intent, the context, those days are gone. So yeah, what we want to have is that strong connection from strategy through to delivery. And yeah, it's great to hear you talk about the dependency model. It is a first-class citizen. Dependencies in Jira Align. You can create dependencies across teams within the same train. You can create dependencies across different programs. And yeah, it's as I was reminded yesterday by Michele, our job here is not to identify and manage the dependencies. Our job is actually to minimize the dependencies that we have. And you need to be able to visualize them first.
Exactly. So today we have about 500 dependencies per PI. Sorry, did you?
No, go ahead. I said it's like it's a self-rolling.
Self-rolling. If anyone has a question, just raise your hands.
Yeah.
Be extrovert. If you're introvert, write in a paper and give it to Reto. He will come back to you. Okay, we have about 500 dependencies. So first step, again, you don't need to be agile to start agile, right? The first step is to know the problem. So let's see all the 500 dependencies you have. Then you go into Jira Align, it tells you which team depends to what team in a wheel format, and that helps us understand the bottleneck. If you have one team in your train that everyone depends on, something is wrong. Because if someone in that team wins the lottery or get COVID, your delivery is jeopardized. You are doomed, right? So that's the next step we're going to have. So we're putting all our 25 trains in Jira Align now. We're going to start doing that analysis and then start reorganizing the trains in such a way that we minimize the dependencies. Because the worst thing you can have is a nice tool that automates a not good process, right? You just have a bad process that's automated. So we're going to start improving that part now. Go ahead.
If you're allowing me, is also important, especially in big organizations in which you have thousands of people collaborating. It doesn't matter if they are software developers or hardware developers or whatever. So you need the people being aligned, as we said, but you also need to have the right processes implemented into a tool. But now the tricky point is the tool is influencing the way people are interacting to each other. So when you're implementing SAFe or other new way of working, you should start thinking on how you are going to operationalize this in a tool from the very beginning, because the tool will influence the way people are working, not just the methodology, or better say the framework you will use.
Mm-hmm. Exactly, especially for now, for us, because in most, I would say 90% of our trains, it's maybe in you guys are resonating coding, but coding is not exactly what we do, because to do a fire sensors that goes there in your well, you need to have the plastics, the mold, the designs, the mechanics, the sensors, the certification process, otherwise you can't sell it, and everything. All these teams are in the train as a shared function or supporting function in SAFe. So I have a Kanban team for regulatory, for sourcing, for manufacturing, for everyone. So when we do a PI planning, we're not talking just a bunch of engineers coming and talking things about code. We're talking about the whole planning process. And that's the second boundary that now we are breaking, right? Because now the PMOs are coming and saying, and what about me? Right? Am I still the guy who has to put the release out of the door, and how do we deal with those releases? Because I don't know if you guys are familiar with hardware development, but I cannot produce a new hardware board every 2 weeks in a Scrum because my customer will kill me. I'll have to go and reinstall my sensor physically everywhere in the world. So for Agile, we are using iterative, the iterations, but not necessarily delivering everything in 2 weeks. So we're still using agile management. So all these guys are now in Jira Line. So Jira Line for us is more than just the tool. It's kind of the crown jewel that will consolidate and aggregate all this information, provided that you have a good process to do so. So it's very nice to see. So
I think what also you need is when you do your PI planning, when you see a lot of dependencies, obviously, I mean, there's visual part of it. And obviously also you have Jira Line now, if you're using Jira Line. So that's also, you would be able to see that on the wheel, right? But the question is, what do? You have a lot of dependencies. You have to question, right? Was my value stream, is that the right one? Do I need to review it, right? This is a question you have to ask yourself, right? Because you can't have a lot of dependencies. If you have a lot of dependencies, which means that something is wrong somewhere, okay? I don't know how that been tackled from your perspective.
As I said to you, I'm not a fanatic, right? So what is exactly a lot of dependencies? Yeah. Now, how many millions of code we do today? How many products we put off the door? So every year we put around 150 new releases out of the door. So 500 dependencies divided by 150, I have, what, 2 per release? I'm good with that. You see what I mean? So you have to be careful, right, to see what makes sense in your organization, even if it doesn't make sense when you read SAFe. SAFe is a guideline, am I right, Michele? SAFe is not the letter of the law. So many people who come from the quality background, like myself, would read SAFe as, oh, thou shalt have a PI planning. Well, this one you probably must have, but apart from this one, you have to be careful with that. But that's why we're going to see if we can restructure the trains, because, you know, I would actually like to have 0 dependencies so that I don't need to manage them anymore, obviously, right?
Not only that, I would say also another very common, I would say, discussion we have is the transformation never ends, right? Because now you are facing well, how we can deal with dependencies. Tomorrow will be another bottleneck that you have to go to. And I reminded what you said also, having the right people on board, because at the end, we said it yesterday, Jira Line, but also SAFe, our communication tool at the end, is how to bring people sharing their knowledge and building stuff, or building value and bringing this value to their customer, which I always describe as who is consuming the work, because we know which is the end customers, and everybody is pretty clear on that, but you have also to consider who is consuming the work you are producing. So what is who is the client of a software developer, for example? Who is consuming the work? Question to the audience. A tester, right? So you have to think also that your software, the software you are delivering, it's testable, because otherwise it won't work, right? Of course, this software is going to be in a fire devices that needs to be tested as well, and needs to be in a house. But also the people consuming your work are the testers, you as a software developer. But I wanted to tell you another story, which is I was working with many airlines, and in one of them, we had pilots in the agile teams. And why? Because nobody on this earth, even if you are the greatest software developer, know how a cockpit is working. What is dealing a pilot with during a flight, before the flight, after the flight, and when you are introducing a new device, you need to know how this device is going to be not just used by the pilot and other personnel, but also how it will interact or how might generate issues with other systems in the cockpit. And so we had pilots in the agile teams, and now you should ask the question, so how you can have pilots in agile teams? Because they need to fly as well, because otherwise they lose their licenses. And that's one of the biggest issues we have, and you had also. So how can we make possible people that are not 100% available joining a team? And so what we did with the pilots was once every PI, they were in one iteration with the teams. So, and we know that, and we were planning around that. So you can do that.
We have pilots, but it's a different type of pilot.
Well, now I'm getting very confused. So you're saying you're developing hardware with SAFe. We have pilots in there. Shane, can you help me out? Or this?
I can try.
Okay.
Yeah. So the hardware for pilots, I think, is what we're doing.
Exactly.
But no, What we're talking about is cross-functional teams. So when we start doing agile in software development, the blueprint is there for a Scrum team. We have product owners, Scrum masters, developers. We might have testers. We might have architects. But the point is, it's a cross-functional team, and you can take a requirement, a backlog, and you can produce something with that team that's valuable to your customers. And we want to scale that concept. And when we build our agile release trains, we're using cross-functional teams as the basis for that. The team is the engine for all of this, and it's a cross-functional team. So whether we have people from sourcing, whether we have people from the warehouse, whether we have pilots that make an appearance in those cross-functional teams, fantastic. And when we work at scale, we have a team of teams, and we have ceremonies around that team of teams. We have inspect and adapt sessions. We have PI planning sessions, and they're really great ways to get acceptance for what you're trying to do with your change in the rest of the organization. So get the top-down people involved, get the top people involved, get the sponsors involved, but get the other stakeholders involved as well. Make them part of those team of teams, make them part of the ceremonies. Give them access to the system as well. You can give them access to Jira Align. Yeah, so there's a set of standard access roles in the environment. They can use one of those. They don't have to go in to change things. They can just go in to take a look. They can go in to access data, access reports. If they are in a doing mode as well, then of course they can be allocated that sort of access into the environment. And yeah, it's just a really great way to make sure that the change actually sticks. Get people involved, and it'll stick better.
Well, it does, right? We just had our last PI plan finished last week. That's why I look a bit tired here. And we had 13 trains in Jira Align. And if you guys have never used Jira Align, let me tell you some things Jira Align does during the PI planning. So if you remember the safe board, if you don't, a safe board is basically sprint 1, 2, 3, 4, and when I'm going to finish my actual product features. And the teams are going to say, oh, I'm going to finish this feature in sprint 3. And then Jira says, but why are you finishing in sprint 3 and having stories for this very same feature in sprint 4? Something is wrong. It doesn't compute. Can you please review that? And it shows us planning issues. Why for us that's important? Because of the customer, right? If I am the QA, the system test team, and I'm going to get that product to test, I would like to get that feature complete. So if I go to my board and look and say, oh, they're going to complete it in sprint 3, and that's what we used to do. We used to do all this in Confluence, believe it or not, 60 people editing the same Confluence page and putting Jira links in there. So they look at there and they say, okay, so if they're finishing my feature in sprint 3, I can start testing them, the system test of that feature in sprint 4, right? Which another problem that we're also changing right now, because ideally you should not have closed it without testing. But again, step by step, eventually we get there, right? So that was a major issue that we found just by using the tool. And now it was the funniest thing in my life. For the first time, I see human beings use something that is much harder, make them work more, and at the end, they love it. You know, it was really interesting. So it really bumped up our PI, I call it robustness, of how you actually plan things and make sure that the things will have this flow. The next step, though, because we're constantly pushing the limits, so the next step is, as I said, I would like to see an epic in Jira Align and all the teams in there, development, QA, technical publications, regulatory, sourcing. Because in Jira Align, you can share an epic with teams, different teams, and each of them can plan the teams independently in the board, and Jira Align will know that. That's not possible in Jira, okay?
Okay, very interesting, but let's go back to your implementation. So it sounds, you said just, okay, people love to work more, but I guess not everything was like this, right? You had some serious challenges
I
and
did.
problems.
I did.
And wait, just a second.
Yeah.
Some people here, they're in front of a Jira line implementation. And you probably can say, if I knew then what I knew now, can you give them some tips?
I can, and then feel free to contact me if you are not in an industry that's competitor to Honeywell, because then I can't disclose information to you. But if you're in other areas, feel free to contact, no problem. So the first problem I had was with a guy in Murten, also known as Morat, here in Switzerland. So he came to the tool, he was an offering manager, and said, Jose, what is the problem? I now have to write the product features in a tool for my team to deliver it to me. I said, how else do you think they would know what you want? I just go and tell them. How do you do with the Chinese? I call them, and do you think they understand everything you say? You know what I mean? Like, you have a very thick German accent, they have a very thick Chinese accent. Half of the communication is lost on that, and the other half is lost on they can't see what you're talking about. So the first and foremost problem is collaboration. People talking to people. And I wouldn't say COVID didn't help. Actually, that was the contrary. COVID actually helped us because people couldn't leave their houses, so they started doing that kind of this inception of how to relate to other human beings by Zoom, and now they can do it more often. But it's very hard for you to get a developer to go after another developer that has a dependency and talk to them if they are on the other side of the world. So communication, collaboration is really hard for you to change the habits of these folks, because generally you have silos, right? Oh, I am QA. Oh, I am the code. So here's the code for you, QA. And then QA will have pleasure as many defects they can find, right? This is the completely wrong mindset. This is not Agile. Agile is there's no QA, there's no me, there's no you. We have a product to deliver, otherwise our salaries don't get paid. You see what I mean? So this change in mindset, breaking the silos, is what took us a long, long time. We're still doing it, by the way.
Yeah, I can imagine. Sonny, you want to say something on this?
I think that's involved a lot, significant actually organizational and cultural change here. It touches not only the structure, it also touches the process, the people, and technology. Okay, and what we need is actually to have the top management to be in sync, right? To be able to alleviate all the challenges the organization is going to face, right? Because we are talking about people here, right? People you don't change from day one, right? So it's a process, right? Like we said before, right? We have to do things iteratively, right? You're not going to succeed at one go, but you're going to move on. But as you move on further, you're going to discover a roadblock. You're going to actually overcome it and move forward.
I think it's also important to know who you are. I have a good friend who is leaders in a very big bank, so a global bank. And he told me a few years back, was a very interesting dinner we had in Madrid, and he told me, so we need to change. So every industry has been disrupted, we need to change. But we are not dolphin. We are not a dolphin. We are a whale, right? And we won't compete with dolphin. We will just not be able to do that. So we cannot compete with the fintech companies that are very rapid, very flexible, because we can't. Or at least we cannot do it in 5 and also not even in 10 years, he said. What we need to do is being the whale, which is the most rapid one. And so this was kind of eye-opening to me, because it means you need to know who you are and you need to know your limits. You were mentioning before, it takes time. And the time is different for every organization. You have to start, possibly not putting an end, how many transformation has been thoughts about. So we do a project now for the transformation, which is a contradiction in terms. Mm-hmm. But then really knowing so what we want to achieve, how we are going to meet these goals we want to achieve, and how are we going to measure if we are on the right track or not. But especially for me, the most important message was know who you are and know where you can go and where are your limits. Because of course, if you are a fintech in a startup, you could use less or even other frameworks or even very, very extreme agile processes. But if you are a bank with 100 years history, you can't, okay? And knowing this is a very precious message, is a gift, as I say, to the big customer working with us, because it's giving you first something which is feasible. So the mission you have in front of you will be achievable. But on the other side, it will make sure that you are not implementing something that your organization cannot digest, right? Because if you are introducing extreme agile practices in a company who has been doing waterfall for the last 50 years, it won't work. And even if management is saying, we will start and we will introduce SAFe in 12 months, this is just wishful thinking, okay? You can do that, of course. You can pay us a lot of money. What you will get at the end will be even worse situation than at the beginning, because people will want to work in a different way, and they are now frustrated because the system doesn't allow them to work like this.
Yeah, that's a difference we made, at least, or I made, which is the difference between agile management and agile development. Agile management is you putting all the whistles and bells of scrums, and whatever you do in life, you have all the rituals and continue to do that. But then your scrum goals for each sprint, every sprint looks like complete analysis, complete design, complete the code, complete integration, complete system test. You're still doing agile management, but not agile development. Agile development is when you pick up one vertical slice of your product to the best that you can, and it's not always possible, and that's what you deliver at the end of 2 weeks. It's not a horizontal thing. Obviously, how do you do that with mechanical? Obviously, I'm not going to get half of a board, a mechanical board, and put there half of an electrical board. But you can get, for instance, your motherboard, your PCB, and divide it in modules and work in one module and integrate it later, rather than writing the whole PCB at once. Okay, so at certain areas, we are very good at agile development, at certain areas not. And some we are very good at agile management, and some are not. Jira Line is helping us with the agile management, but the agile development, which is like BDD and these sorts of things, that's why the coaches are there, to start changing from leadership, and I hope Jira Line will help as well with the teams and the initiatives and the capabilities, etc., to change that mindset and to change the way we develop the products. The first thing they asked us is, so a portfolio epic is a project. Cool, I love Jira Line. And we're still struggling to explain to the PMOs that it's not, and to the offering managers that it's not, because it's a full change in the mindset. It's a strategic thinking about your requirements and your product. I don't care when I'm going to release it. I may not even have the budget to ever release it. Okay? You said?
Just one thing to add. We are talking about a change here in the way the organization delivers work. We are talking about people, we're talking about process, we're talking about platform. You need to do all of those things. You can't forget about the people. And something I heard yesterday was, nobody ever got good at tennis by reading a 26-page PowerPoint slide deck. But we think people are going to get good at scaling agile just by pushing material at them and getting them to go and do a certification. There is the role of the coach. We can't forget about our coaches. We have brilliant coaches in the room today. And for organizations that are new to scaling agile, embedding coaches in those teams is highly recommended.
Valiantys, lead the way.